Boston, Massachusetts, 4:12 a.m.
Come on. I'm trying. We need to get this door open. What does it look like I'm doing? Use the crowbar. All right. Oh my God. There's dozens of them. Poor things. Oh, come on. Help me get the cages open.
The incident happened on the night of March 23rd in a research lab outside of Boston. The police report stated that 2 unknown intruders entered the lab at night. They were part of a radical animal rights group trying to free rhesus monkeys from captivity and to burn down the lab.
Oh my God. Are you seeing this? Over there. It's a head.
The severed head of a rhesus monkey, test subject number 48, was lying on an examination table. Tubes and cables were attached to its open neck and throat.
It's still alive. How is that possible?
Test subject number 48 had been kept artificially alive for 19 hours now, a medical record made possible by feeding tubes, plastic air vents, IV drips with antibiotics, and a constant circulation of fresh blood. Its eyes darted around the room with helpless panic.
I think it's trying to tell us something. That's impossible. My God, who would do something like that? Who are you? Get him! Oh!
The man had appeared out of nowhere. He had come to investigate the sudden noises coming out of the lab.
The crowbar! Here! Is he dead?
Who cares? Get the gasoline.
The monkeys are all out. They're free.
Good. Keep dousing the place. We need more gasoline!
What about that one? The head?
We can't do anything for him anymore.
And the guy?
He's probably dead already. Give me the match.
Let's go.
The man wasn't dead. He woke up as the flames started to engulf him. With panic in his eyes, he saw the fire eating into his clothes, his skin, his arms and legs. Blyton, on the coast of Cornwall, 8:32 p.m. 10 years later.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Edwina Jackson was a middle-aged hairdresser. It was December 23rd and she was driving home from a Christmas party. She had celebrated with some friends, cupcakes and tea, and more than a little brandy. She didn't see it until it was almost too late.
Oh, my Lord!
Lying in the middle of a dark coastal road was a small wooden crate.
What on earth?
Edwina had always been the curious type. Even as a child, she could never resist a mystery. And that wooden box was a delicious mystery. A fine mist clung to the dark hills and meadows. Edwina carefully approached the crate. She cautiously picked it up.
Maybe it's your Christmas present, Edwina.
With eager, shivering fingers, she opened the box.
There is a darkness that is more than an absence of light. It's a living thing. It takes you completely. My name is John Sinclair. I work for Scotland Yard, Special Division.
London, 11:57 p.m.
It was the day before Christmas Eve. Other people were decorating their trees, wrapping gifts, getting ready to celebrate with their families. Me, I was practicing at the target range in the basement of New Scotland Yard.
Well done. How many shots was that, Sinclair? 5?
Happy Christmas. Why aren't you celebrating?
Why aren't you?
I'm working on my aim.
You should start by looking at the target. 1 hit out of 5. What happened to you, John?
I said I'm working on it.
It's not your aim that's the trouble, Sinclair. You know that. Here, give me your gun. Step aside. You see, my boy? Bullseye.
I didn't know you still had it in you.
Once a soldier, always a soldier. You know that. You're doing it all wrong.
How am I doing it wrong?
It's your anger. You've let it get the better of you. Always keep calm. Steady. Aim. Exhale. Happy Christmas.
No one knew his name. People in these parts simply called him Dr. Satanos. 3 years ago, he had taken up residence in an abandoned prison on a small island less than a mile off the coast of Cornwall. During the low tide, one could simply walk across the mudflats towards the foreboding rocks. But during the high tide, when the waves were coming in, it was pandemonium. The prison had been built in the 19th century. The last execution took place in the 1960s. After a bloody prison riot, the facility was shut down and fell into disrepair. In the old days, this was where the Crown sent its most dangerous creatures. But now, it was inhabited once more by its most deadly creature yet. He needed a quiet place to work. He was exiled from the medical community, and he had turned the old prison grounds into a laboratory of sorts. He was a small, pudgy man with a round face and a bushy mustache. He had the look of a kindly uncle. He was dressed in a white lab coat, splattered with specks of blood. The room was filled with medical and electronic instruments. He walked up to an operating table. A young man, Harold Galloway, was tied down with heavy leather straps. He and his wife, June Galloway, had been abducted while hiking along the Cornish coast. Harold's wide-open eyes followed the doctor's every move. Dr. Satanos reached for a scalpel.
I'm afraid this is going to sting a little bit. Oh dear. Let's not make a fuss, shall we?
Kill me.
My dear fellow, I'm not trying to kill you. Although, regrettably, the survival rate with this kind of procedure is very low. 0% to be precise.
Oh, God!
It's important to see how your neck muscles react when I separate them. Let's do one more, shall we?
A tall, misshapen man entered the room. He was limping. His body was covered with horrible burn scars. His arms and legs were bent, the result of a fire that had engulfed him 10 years ago. Only his face was still somewhat human.
Yes, Tommy? I trust the disposal was successful. Well, do speak up.
I lost it.
You... what?
The head.
You lost the head.
I'm sorry.
Tommy, it's a head. It bedevils me to think how one could possibly lose such an appendage.
I don't know how it happened. I was on my way to the moor, and suddenly, I've only noticed afterwards, the head was gone. There was nothing I could have done.
Oh, Oh, shush, dear child. There's always something to be done. One must always look at the bright side.
I looked everywhere. In the ditch, in the bushes, everywhere. The head was gone.
A scientific impossibility. Objects do not simply disappear. It must be somewhere. It's merely a question of finding it, you see. Unless, of course, someone has already found it. Tommy,
Yes?
is there something you're not telling me?
No!
Tommy, what did I say about fibbing?
Oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive.
Very good, Tommy. Go on.
I saw a car. A woman. She was on her way to the village, to Brighton. I was hiding in the shrubs. She got out of the car. I couldn't see.
You don't perchance happen to be aware of the identity of this mysterious female motorist?
Yes, yes! I saw her a few times in the village. I know where she lives. She's the hairdresser.
Well, splendid. Now be on your way. You know what to do. And, of course, it would be preferable if this little mishap were to remain our secret. You know how people are. They fear what they do not understand.
Yes.
He opened a drawer. His hands reached inside. When he turned back around, he held a stiff leather strap. Not unlike a baton, it was an instrument many schoolchildren had felt on their tender hands, meant to instill an iron will. This one was rather beautifully crafted and kept in excellent condition.
No! Please! I'll find it! I swear!
Slowly, Dr. Satanos approached. Tommy edged back and back and back until he was against the tiled wall of the laboratory.
Tommy, take your medicine.
The leather struck the palms of his hands. His skin was torn open. Blood ran down his deformed hands and arms.
This hurts me as much as it hurts you, my boy!
Tommy crouched on the floor, helpless, bleeding from open wounds.
Well done, Tommy. Get up and wipe that blood off your hands. It's rather unsanitary.
Please. I'll make you proud.
I should certainly hope so. Oh, and Tommy,
Yes.
you do know that I'm doing this all for you, don't you?
Yes. Papa.
Now, where were we?
Brighton, 3:08 a.m. Edwina Jackson was lying in her bed, twisting and turning in a fitful sleep. Constable Brown hadn't believed her at first, but when she brought him to the old turnpike road, the head was still there. That would teach him to doubt her. In her dreams, she kept seeing it. That gruesome severed head, those hollow eyes, those parted silent lips, the faint traces of decay. He came out of the darkness, the tall, misshapen man who must have been beautiful once. He lunged forward and pressed his hand on her mouth. Edwina Jackson tried to scream, but his strong heart grip stifled every sound. When she opened her eyes, she looked directly into the distorted face above her. She could feel his breath on her skin. She kicked her legs frantically, trying to free herself in vain.
What do you want?
You know what I want.
The police has it. I showed him Constable Brown. He has it. Please don't hurt me.
You're scared.
Yes.
You think I'm ugly, don't you?
No.
Come on, admit it. I'm hideous. Even Papa thinks I'm a freak.
You're not a freak.
That's right. I'm not.
Tommy reached for a sharp combat knife he always carried with him.
You're beautiful.
Her blood seeped from her open throat, soaking the sheets in a hot, liquid red. Tommy stopped and looked at his bloody hands.
What did I do?
He recoiled in horror.
What did I do?
What is that?
Evidence.
Evidence of what exactly?
Marianne, sweetheart. She was telling the truth.
Mrs. Jackson? That old drunk?
I went there myself. She took me there. I saw...
Saw what?
I need a drink.
Barney, do you mean to tell me that there is a human head on my table?
Our table, sweetheart. It's our table. Remember, we went to the superstore together? And you started crying.
Take that box off the table right now.
There. Happy now?
What is going on here, Barney?
Constable Brown told his wife the whole story. Less than 3 hours ago, Mrs. Jackson had woken them both up. At first, Barney Brown didn't believe her,
Looking at
but
me
she
like-
had insisted.
Like it didn't understand. I put it back in the box, and
Dr. Satanos.
that's what she said.
Well, who else could it be? That horrible little man with his creepy smile. Oof. He's a devil, that one. What was that?
I think it came from outside. The shed. I'll take a look. Hand me that flashlight, will you? Hello?
The door to the shed was open. In the beam of his torch, he saw a man, a misshapen, disfigured man covered in blood. Dull eyes were staring at him.
Who are you?
Tommy pulled the knife and flung himself at the constable. Brown's reaction was purely instinctual. He dove off to the side, his hand shot up, the flashlight blocking the blow of the knife. Suddenly it went dark in the shed. The knife edged closer and closer to his throat.
Get away from my husband, you freak.
Oh my God!
What?
Mrs. Jackson. She was the one who found it. She might be in danger.
Constable Brown wasted no time. He took his motorcycle and drove out to Church Street, where Mrs. Jackson lived. Her narrow, two-story house was dark.
Mrs. Jackson? Hello? Are you awake? Mrs. Jackson?
There was nothing. No sound. Constable Brown went to the back door.
What the?
Someone had pried it open. Constable Brown turned on the lights and went upstairs.
Mrs. Jackson, are you in there?
Between Jackson was lying in a pool of blood. Brown felt sick to his stomach. The murderer had cut the carotid artery. The woman had completely bled out. It was an ocean of red.
Get me Scotland Yard, London, please.
Blyton the old prison. 7:36 a.m., December 24th.
And now the drill. There. That wasn't so bad now, was it? I'm afraid it's the only way I can implant the translator in your spine.
Just kill me. I can't take
Fortitude, my dear fellow. Fortitude.
pain.
Oh, regrettable, I know. We all have our burden to bear, my dear fellow, and I don't enjoy this any more than you do. Do you know what my mother used to say?
Papa!
Tommy, can't you see that I'm working?
I'm sorry. I thought you wanted to know about...
Right, of course. Do excuse me for a moment, my friend, will you? I'll be right back. Don't go away. So, talk to me, my boy. What happened? Did you find it?
Did you find it? This was precisely the question Tommy had been dreading. He had thought for hours what he could possibly say. He remembered his father's words very well. Oh, what a tangled web we weave when we first practice to deceive.
Well, speak, boy, or have you lost your tongue?
Yes, I found it.
Excellent. Such joyful tidings. Tommy,
Yes, Papa.
you're not fibbing again, are you?
No, Papa. I found it. The old woman had it.
Ah. So, there's a witness.
Not anymore. I killed her.
Oh, you poor boy.
I didn't mean to.
Of course you didn't. We all do unpleasant things now and again, things we're not proud of. But we do what we must, Tommy, in the name of science.
Yes, Papa. Science.
You do want a new body, don't you?
Yes, Papa.
Not this hideous shell you have now, deformed, burnt.
Yes, Papa.
Well, there you have it. Look, this man right here is my final experiment. And then we can move on to the next phase. Let me show you. Hold on. I'll need a scalpel. You see, when your brain sends a command, such as move the leg, like so, the leg starts to wiggle. But once the spinal cord is severed, the brain's commands can't be transmitted anymore. The person becomes paralyzed. This is the whole problem with head transplants. I've been struggling with it for years. But now I think I have a solution.
Yes?
Modern technology. Look at this little thing.
A microchip.
If I implant it in the spinal cord, it should allow me to transmit the data from the brain to the rest of the body. It's revolutionary. I'm not just doing this for you. I'm doing this for all of mankind.
Thank you, Papa.
But what did you do with the head? Did you bring it?
No, I threw it away in the bog.
You threw it away? Tommy, it's not a piece of rubbish to be discarded at will. We must respect the human body.
I'm sorry, Papa. I thought...
Don't worry, my boy. What's done is done. The head was useless anyway. We need a more fitting one.
What about mine?
We're not there yet. We need one more experiment before we move on. We need a 7.5.
This is the police. Open up.
Maybe there's nobody home.
Don't be daft, Wilkins. Their boat's still here.
Constable Brown hadn't slept. After he called in the murder, the specialists had arrived to secure the scene. The coroner had taken Edwina's body to a facility in Exeter, but there is one thing the constable had not mentioned. Dr. Satanos. Who would believe him? What evidence was there?
Are you sure this is a good idea, sir?
It's just a friendly visit.
His assistant, Wilkins, was a skinny, skittish man who had been working at the Blyton Constabulary for less than a year. He was, perhaps, in the wrong profession.
Oh, I don't know about this. What if he cuts off our head?
Oh, come now. Two strapping lads like us. By the way, did you bring your gun? Careful!
I'm sorry.
Don't point it at me! Stop shaking like that!
And a good morning to you, gentlemen. Happy Christmas. How may I be of service?
You're under arrest.
Shut up, Wilkins.
Under arrest.
I apologise for my assistant. He's new here. Just a routine matter, sir. We're...
Yes?
Mrs. Jackson was murdered last night and he thinks you've done it.
My dear fellows, you can't be serious.
I'm sorry. No, he didn't mean...
Aren't you going to slap handcuffs on my wrist? Drag me away to a dank, dark cell?
Well, we are just warning people, keeping an eye out, you see. There's a murderer.
On the loose.
Yes, and we're concerned...
Oh, dear, I'm so glad you stopped by. Good thinking, Inspector. I must say, you've got a good head on your shoulders, Mr...
Brown, Barney Brown. And this is my assistant, Wilkins. Still a bit green behind the ears, I'm afraid. And you are?
Rather tired, I must say. I've been working all night.
Working?
Perhaps not the strongest alibi, I know. But alas, it is the truth. I never left my laboratory. Oh dear, how rude of me. Please, won't you come in? Let me offer you gentlemen a nice cup of tea.
I don't think that's...
Thank you, splendid. Awfully cold out here.
Please, follow me. The old warden's office is a little more inviting.
What is this place?
It used to be a prison. And it still is, in a sense. I am completely captivated by my work. I hardly ever get out. Do you golf, Inspector?
Sorry?
Golf. You know, the little ball. You hit it with a stick of some sort.
Oh, can't say that I do.
I've been told that I should take it up. Good for the nerves, they say. Don't you think, Inspector?
Constable, please.
Here we are, gentlemen. Make yourself at home. Did you know they used to execute people here?
Execute?
Chop, chop, off with their heads. Of course, those days are long gone.
Yeah, in any event, about this murder last night...
One moment, please.
The doctor walked over to the large desk and pressed a button on an intercom.
Tommy, would you mind bringing me and the two police officers who are sitting in my office with their backs to the door a cup of tea?
Tea?
Yes, Tommy. Tea. It's a hot liquid substance. Now, please.
He released the button, then opened a drawer and took out a tape measure.
What are you doing?
Oh, don't mind me. I'm just curious.
About what?
You really do have a most magnificent cranium.
Oh, well, thank you. About the murder...
What hat size do you wear?
I beg your pardon?
A 7.5, I should say, don't you think? Would you mind if I just want to take a quick measure. Just as I thought. 7.5. What's your blood type?
O negative.
Oh, splendid.
What's this all about?
I'm sorry, Constable. My interest is purely professional. You see, I'm a doctor.
What kind of doctor?
A very, very naughty one.
I'm sorry.
At that moment, a deformed man burst into the room. He grasped Brown from behind and pressed the knife against his throat. Wilkins leapt to his feet.
Let him go!
He reached for his gun.
I'm afraid I can't do that. Drop the gun.
But please!
Well done. You see, gentlemen, I'm afraid we're quite out of tea.
The doctor leaned forward and picked up the weapon. He aimed it at Wilkins.
Wilkins! No! You monster!
Hush now, Constable. There's no use.
Dr. Satanos and Tommy led Barney Brown deeper into the bowels of the old prison. The walls were stained with blood.
Where are you taking me?
You'll see soon enough. And this is where they used to execute prisoners.
In the middle of the vast chamber, stood a guillotine.
No!
He pulled the constable onto the guillotine. He pressed the man's head down. Dr. Satanos raised his hand, a signal for Tommy. The deformed man pulled the lever. London, 9:24 a.m., December 24th. John Sinclair was awakened from his uneasy dreams by an insistent knocking at his door.
Oh, hold your horses. Finally, Sinclair.
What time is it?
Time to wake up. Are you all right?
Peachy keen.
Aren't you going to offer me a coffee? You have rather a nice flat, Sinclair.
Thank you.
Needs a woman's touch, though.
So do I. Do you take sugar? Milk?
Sugar, thank you. Black as night, sweet as a stolen kiss.
Ever the poet. Is there anything I can help you with on this fine holiday morning, or did you just pop by to enjoy my hospitality?
You smell of whiskey. And why is there no Christmas tree?
I didn't realize they were mandatory. Is there a reason you wanted to see me?
Oh, John, always so quick to anger lately. Yes, there is a reason. You're still a member of this department, don't forget. I have a little Christmas gift for you.
Don't bother, I'm the man who has everything.
You don't have this. I had Miss Perkins of Control prepare a little dossier. Take a look.
A human head? Are you serious?
Last night, in a wooden box in the middle of the road. The head in question is currently in the pathology department in Exeter. They haven't been able to ID it yet. But there have been several missing persons in that area over the last few months.
Who would do something like that?
Our prime suspect at this time is a man the locals, in a touch of admirable whimsy, refer to as Dr. Satanos.
Seriously? Where did he get his PhD?
University of Cambridge. He's a surgeon. He used to work at Harvard, but there was an incident. He came back to England, but the medical council barred him from practicing.
What did he do? Drop a gummy bear into a patient during surgery?
Oh, speaking of gummy bears, I brought some from last week's department Christmas party. Would you like some? They're a bit stale.
Sounds tempting, but no.
Are you watching your weight?
Are you watching yours? You looked quite convincing in your Father Christmas get-up last week.
Well, that's because I spread joy.
Well then, Santa, tell me more about this Satanos fellow.
He's an expert in limb transplants. Cuts the heads off rhesus monkeys and puts them on different monkeys.
What's the point? It's still a monkey.
I'm not a scientist, Sinclair. I don't know. What I do know is that animal rights activists stormed his lab and set it on fire. His son nearly burned to death.
What happened to the monkeys?
The police report doesn't say, Sinclair. This isn't a bedtime story. I'm not concerned about your monkeys. Not while there's human heads being found on the streets of Cornwall.
You think he's still up to his old tricks?
That's what I want you to find out. The woman who had found the head was murdered later that night. Stabbed to death in her own bed.
That can't be a coincidence.
And that's not all. A young couple, Harold and June Galloway, mysteriously vanished from the area 4 days ago. I'll need you to leave immediately.
Yes, sir.
Oh, and John.
Yes?
Don't lose your head.
Hilarious. Less than an hour later, I was on the M4, headed towards the coast in my silver Bentley. It was purring like a cat. I made good time. I stopped for lunch outside of Brighton and took a glance at the case file. There wasn't much information. This so-called Dr. Satanos had a history of ethics violations and corruption. 3 years ago, he bought an abandoned prison with money he'd received from a medical company. The identity of the human head was unknown. The witness who found it, now deceased, was a 53-year-old hairdresser from Brighton. Unmarried, no family. The young couple that had gone missing had been hiking on the coast. They vanished without a trace. But there was nothing to connect them to Dr. Satanos. Still, I had an uneasy feeling.
Will there be anything else? Another coffee?
No, thank you. Just the bill, please.
Coming right up.
Glenda Perkins had helpfully supplied me with a map of the old prison, which I took the time to study. Then, I found what I was looking for.
The bill. Here you go, sir.
Thank you. Keep the change.
Why, thank you, sir.
One more question.
You can ask me anything.
I understand there was a young couple, Mr. and Mrs. Galloway, who stopped by here for dinner a few times. They disappeared 4 days ago. Do you know anything about it?
Dr. Satanos.
I'm sorry?
You need to leave.
The atmosphere had turned icy. It was clear I wasn't going to get any answers. I left the rest of my sandwich behind and went back to my car.
It was cold outside. The fog was like a fine veil that came in from the sea. Marianne Brown wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders as she walked quickly to her house. There was no one to meet her back at her house. The lights on the Christmas tree were blinking. It made the room seem even lonelier. With trembling fingers, she turned on the light. The door to the living room was ajar. Marianne pushed it open. The deformed man pressed his hand over her mouth. Marianne felt a panting breath on her neck, and a rough voice whispered,
Calm down now, will you? Not a sound, or I'll have your blood.
He let go of her. Only then did Marianne Brown recognize the intruder.
You? Me? How did you get in here? Through the window. It was open. You made it easy for me. Your husband has given us more trouble, but now... Now I need to silence you. No!
Marianne sat up. Naked fear tightened her throat. A devilish smile appeared on Tommy's lips as he slowly approached her. And at this moment, Marianne Brown decided to fight.
No!
She reached for a heavy paperweight. She threw it. Tommy staggered back. For a few seconds, her path to the door was clear. She only had one chance. She threw herself against the door, tore it open, and ran outside into the cold winter afternoon. Tommy recovered quickly, very quickly. There were no people on the streets. Everyone was at home by now with their families. Tommy could hear her frantic, panicked breathing. It excited him. Suddenly she fell. She cried out. Tommy was immediately on her. He pressed her down. He didn't notice the sound of the car approaching. He pulled out his knife. Marianne couldn't move. Her heart was racing. She waited for the fatal stab. Tommy raised the knife. Suddenly...
Don't move! Scotland Yard! I jumped out of my Bentley, but I wasn't fast enough. The man dashed off like a wild animal. I knelt beside the woman. Are you hurt?
Please, mister, find that man.
Let's make sure you're unharmed first. I helped her up and led her to my car. She sat down on the passenger seat. Are you all right?
I think so.
I'll be right back. Keep the doors locked. I'll leave you the keys. If he comes back, you drive off. Understand?
Yes.
And be careful. She's my one and only.
Yes.
The damp grass went up to my knees. Soon, I came upon a marsh. Wet mud smacked under my feet. I saw no sign of him. Damn it. I returned to my Bentley. It was unharmed.
Did you find him?
I'm sorry. He's gone.
Who are you?
DCI John Sinclair, Scotland Yard.
I'm Marianne Brown.
My husband's the local constable.
Is he the one who reported the finding?
Yes.
I need to speak to him.
He's gone.
What do you mean?
I mean, he's gone. He went to the prison out there, and he never came back. I think they killed him. Oh, God.
I did my best to comfort her, but I feared the worst. There was no time to waste. Mrs. Brown, I need your help. I have to go there, the island.
Right now? It's getting dark soon.
Then we'd better hurry. Marianne Brown had taken me to a friend of hers, an old fisherman who we found tending his boat at the pier. I paid him to let me borrow his motorboat, and I was on my way. The sea was stormy. Soon I reached the isle. I'd been told that in a few hours during the low tide at dawn, I would be able to walk to the isle, but I couldn't wait that long. I found a quiet bay. With a sense of foreboding, I tied up the boat and began exploring the rocks. A fine mist was rising. I was glad when I finally saw a narrow path leading up to the prison. I knew that I couldn't very well walk in through the front door. Whatever was going on behind the walls, I needed the element of surprise. I remembered the map of the prison. I was looking for a side entrance. And then I found it. A small metal door covered with rust. I turned on my flashlight. I found myself in a narrow corridor. The floor was wet and slippery. Step by step, I made my way deeper into the prison. I had my flashlight in my left hand and my Beretta in my right. Behind a steel door, I saw the cell block. The bars seemingly stretched out into infinity. The voice came from one of the cells. It was a woman.
Oh, thank God.
Who are you?
My name is June Galloway. I've been kept prisoner here. Me and my husband, Harold.
Where is he?
They took him yesterday.
Do you have any idea what happened to him?
I've been hearing screams. Get me out of here.
The cell door is locked. Hold on. I took off my jacket and wrapped it around the muzzle of my gun.
What are you doing?
Keep your voice down. I'm trying to muffle the sounds. The cell door burst open.
Oh, thank you.
Thank me later. Let's go. The prison was like a maze.
Where are we?
I think this is a cold storage.
Oh my God.
The large walk-in freezer was packed with human body parts. Heads, arms, torsos, even entire bodies, wrapped in plastic.
Dear Lord.
Frozen eyes were staring at us.
Mrs. Galloway, I'm sorry to have to ask you this.
What?
Do you recognize your husband in here?
What?
Take a look.
Oh, God.
Horrified, June stared at the body parts.
No, I don't see him.
We took a few more careful steps inside. That was our mistake.
It was right around Christmas, and in the village of Blyton, not a creature was stirring. That was because everyone was afraid for their lives. Marianne Brown had quit smoking 14 years ago on the advice of her doctor. After John Sinclair had rescued her from the deformed man, she had spent the rest of the day in a near catatonic state, going through one cigarette after another, staring at the cheerful Christmas programming on the telly with dull and listless eyes. She could not sleep. Her fear was keeping her awake. But there was another feeling. She could feel the hate consuming her. She wanted them dead, both of them, Dr. Satanos and his crippled lackey. she wanted them to suffer. Her husband kept his hunting rifle in a cabinet in his study, a Winchester. She had seen him use it. She had seen it blast a hole the size of a fist. And last night, she had aimed it at the cripple. She reached into the cabinet.
Are you all right?
I'm fine.
What are we going to do now?
I had no idea what we were going to do now. For the last hour, I had been attacking the door with everything I had. I even shot my gun at the lock. Nothing. We were trapped in a freezer full of corpses, and the cold was slowly seeping into our bodies. And the air, I could feel the air getting thinner. I sank to the ground beside June.
Here, take my jacket.
No, that's all right.
Take it!
Thank you.
Suddenly, I heard a noise outside.
Careful now, my pretty. Don't you move or I'll shoot. Come with me.
The man brought us both to a large room, probably the former infirmary. A small man in surgical scrubs was working at an operating table. I saw a body, but I couldn't tell whether it was dead or alive. It was covered by a white sheet.
What's that?
Oh, there you are, my uninvited guest. Welcome.
What are you doing?
I have just finished 5 hours of absolutely grueling surgery. Who do I have the pleasure of addressing?
John Sinclair, Scotland Yard.
How would you like to go down in the annals of medicine, Mr. Sinclair? Tonight we will make history. I have, for the first time, successfully attached a man's head to another man's body.
The severed head of a man was lying on a nearby tray table. He had tubes and cables attached to his neck and throat. It was Constable Brown.
You're mad.
Oh, they called Louis Pasteur mad. They called Christian Barnard mad. And he invented the heart transplant. No, my friends, I'm not mad. I am a totally sane scientist.
What are you trying to do?
Well, a human head transplant, of course. It will change medicine. I'm building on the pioneering work that Dr. Demikoff did on dogs back in East Germany. Anyone can have a new body, provided, of course, there's a donor. Youth, beauty, it's all attainable. And thanks to my new microchip transmitter, we can cure paralysis. Quadriplegics everywhere will rise to cheer me.
That should be fun.
Let's see, shall we? The anesthesia should be wearing off now. He's coming to. It's alive.
Slowly, the patient started to move under the ghostly white sheet. He seemed to be raising himself up. The sheet fell off.
No!
Its hands were feebly groping at the table. Its legs were twitching. And then he opened his eyes. His eyes were in anguish.
Look at that. Full motor control. His arms, his legs, the transmitter is working. What is he doing? Why is he smashing things?
The creature lunged at its creator. Its fingers wrapped tightly around his neck.
Get off me!
Tommy raised his gun and aimed it at the creature.
No! Papa! Papa!
But it was too late.
Tommy, you bad little boy.
Harold!
June stumbled towards the dying body of her husband.
June, don't!
Tommy drew his knife and pressed it against June's throat.
I'll kill you all!
Let her go!
No!
Helplessly, I watched him back off, through the door, with June as his hostage. I picked up the gun.
Blyton, 5:48 a.m. The tide had receded. It was shortly before dawn. Marianne Brown was walking across the mud flats towards the aisle. Her feet trudged heavily through the mud. Her cigarette was dangling from her lips. She carried the hunting rifle. There was only one thought on her mind: revenge.
I ran down the corridors of the old prison. It's not easy trying to follow a sound in a labyrinth of dark hallways. I took a few wrong turns and found myself having to backtrack. Every time that happened, I could feel cold rage rising up inside me. It felt as if I was in a nightmare, running, but never moving fast enough. What in God's name was he doing to her? As I pulled open the heavy door, it occurred to me, not for the first time, that I might be running into a trap. But what choice did I have? I found myself in a large dome-like chamber made up entirely of brick. My heart stopped. In the middle of the chamber stood a guillotine. And on that guillotine, her hands and feet bound, was June Galloway.
Help me!
I saw Tommy a moment too late. He was by the guillotine. He threw his knife. The blade sank deep into my shoulder. The pain shot through my entire body. I fell to my knees and dropped my gun.
That's what you get.
I reached for the handle. I had to pull the damn thing out. No two ways about it. I could feel every inch of the blade moving through my muscles. It was a feeling unlike any other. An explosion of pain. And then it was out. My shoulder was throbbing. I felt dizzy. I looked around. I saw Tommy's hand reaching for the lever of the guillotine. June's eyes were nervously staring at me, bleeding. If she died, it would be my fault. I couldn't let that happen. Despite the cold, there was sweat on my forehead. I fought against the pain in my shoulder. With my right hand, I reached for my gun. I raised it and fired a shot in one single fluid motion. I missed. The bullet bore into the wooden beam of the guillotine. Dust and splinters broke off. Tommy squinted and stepped back. He must have got something in his eye.
You missed me.
Today wasn't really my day. Only one bullet left. I tried to remember what Sir James had told me. The problem was my anger. I had to stay calm. Now or never. A look of horror came over my face.
Say goodbye.
He pulled the lever. Her eyes found mine. She looked astonished. Her mouth opened as if to say something, and then, improbably, her entire head slipped off her body. A jet of blood sprayed from her open neck. Her dying body was flinching. I sank to my knees. Tommy staggered back. He clutched his stomach. I turned around. Behind me, in the doorway, stood Marianne Brown. A cigarette was dangling from her lips. Her mascara was smeared from crying. She was holding a rifle.
Happy Christmas, you sick bastard!
Tommy sank to his knees. In the gleam of the flashlight, I could see that the rifle shot had torn open his stomach.
No.
Marianne walked up to Tommy. She cocked her rifle and pressed it to his forehead.
No, please, don't shoot me!
This is for my Barney!
I staggered towards June's body. Her head was lying in the basket. With trembling fingers, I reached inside. I carefully lifted her head out of the basket. Her eyes were still staring out at me, uncomprehending. I looked at her face, frozen with horror. And then she blinked. I nearly dropped the head. But I knew, of course, that the muscles could still react for a few seconds, even minutes after death. I sank down, still holding June's severed head in my hands. Her hair was streaked with blood. I wiped it out of her face. I'm so sorry. I looked into her eyes, and I asked myself if her soul was at peace. Marianne and I made it safely back to the boat I had hidden in the small bay. I felt immeasurably exhausted. I kept seeing June's face in front of me, the pleading look in her eyes.
Are you all right?
It's my fault. She's dead.
It's not. You tried to save her. It's them. They did this.
I nodded. But it was no consolation. I knew I would carry her death with me forever. Everything inside me was cold. I looked up and saw the sun rise over the ocean. It was a new day. Christmas Day.
Santa Claus, don't be late on Christmas Eve. We're hoping that old Rudolph finds his way. Santa, I can hardly wait for Christmas Eve, so you better bring lots of presents in your sleigh.
John Sinclair, Demon Hunter Episode 3, Dr. Satanos. Audio movie by Gabriel Conroy, based on the original novel by Jason Dark. John Sinclair was played by Andrew Wincott. The narrator was Anthony Scordi. Sir James Powell was David Rintoul, and Dr. Satanos was Gareth Armstrong. Barney Brown was played by Tim Bentinck. Marianne Brown by Nicolette Mackenzie. June Galloway was played by Alex Wilton Regan, and Harold Galloway by Ben Whitehead. The animal rights activists were played by Bill Roberts and Eric Myers, Edwina Jackson by Charlotte Moore, Wilkins by Nico Lennon, and the waitress was Martha McIntosh. This audio movie was recorded between December 2014 and January 2015 at OM UK Studios London and Indamix Productions Los Angeles. The recording engineers were Juan Manuel Delfin in London and Matt Lanz in Los Angeles. The voice director was Douglas Welbat. Creative director was Patrick Simon. The casting consultant was Victoria Prentice. And the executive producer was Mark Zieper. Post-production took place at Ear to Brain Productions. This is a Basti Entertainment production for 2015.